Russian president met with president of the World Development Bank, Rousseff, as world leaders continue to arrive for BRICS Summit. On Monday night, Cuba confirmed 1,931 connected circuits as the country continues to recover its electric system. And the United Nations Children's Fund reiterates its call for urgent action on the dire conditions in which thousands of children are surviving in the Gaza Strip. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Russia, the host president of the BRICS Summit, Vladimir Putin, met on Tuesday morning with the president of the new development bank, Rousseff. The Russian head of state assured that the increase of transactions in local currency allows to reduce commissions for debt service and increasing the financial independence of member countries. For her part, Rousseff, as president of the financial entity, assured that the BRICS will be able to include other countries of the Global South in the funding plans. These talks aim to the de-dollarization and ponder that the group's plans also contribute to minimize geopolitical risks. In the same context, President Putin has held bilateral meetings with certain members invited to the BRICS Summit. Among them is President Narendra Modi and President Cyril Ramaphosa. Expected reunion with President of China Xi Jinping and President of Egypt Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. And to go deeper on the importance of this year's BRICS Summit, we are joined by U.S. human rights and labor rights lawyer Dan Kovalik. Hello, Dan. Welcome to From the South.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Dan, all is ready for the summit to begin in a couple of hours. This summit in particular comes in a key moment in the international arena. All eyes are on what the BRICS 2024 summit can produce. So what can we expect and how important is this year's summit?
Well, it's very important. I mean, I think the world is waiting, for the expansion of this multipolar world, of another pole to essentially protect the rest of the world from the West and the United States. There's some hope that eventually a new currency will come out of this to compete with the US dollar. I guess Putin has signaled that that won't come at this meeting, but I think eventually that will come. And I think the one thing I understand will come out of this is that Venezuela will be admitted as a full partner of BRICS.
Growth of the BRICS format is one of the main topics in this year. Earlier this year, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates joined the bloc. Other countries, as you were saying, have expressed their readiness, like Venezuela, Cuba, and many others. So the question is, how can BRICS, as it continues to grow, bring about that multipolar world with enhanced cooperation and win-win trade among the peoples of the world?
Well, I think the main thing they can do is to try to protect countries from U.S. sanctions. Right now, the U.S. has 30% of the world's population under sanctions. And the only way it's able to do that is through its dominance of the world economy, through the dominance of the U.S. dollar. And so I think BRICS will have to come up with a new currency that will be able to compete with the U.S. dollar, so countries don't have to depend on the dollar, and therefore the sanctions won't hurt as much. And of course, BRICS will open up new paths of trade, again, that will allow countries to be able to avoid the worst of the sanctions.
Just earlier today, the President Putin had a meeting with the new development bank President Rousseff, and they were talking about enhancing these transactions in national currencies and in the idea of creating a new currency for BRICS countries to trade in for the benefit of the nation. How could this currency be? How would it work?
Well, I'm not an economist, so I'm not exactly sure how it will work, but I think ultimately if you get buy-in from all these countries, which represent I think they'll end up representing a majority of the world's population. I mean, when you have China and India alone, you have a huge percentage of the world's population. So if you have all these countries buy into a new currency, and if that currency is backed by something, by oil, for example, or gold, I think that they would have a real chance to compete with the US dollar, which is frankly backed on nothing but the full faith and credit clause of the US Constitution. And I think people are realizing they can't really put faith in the dollar because, again, it's based on nothing. And the US is so far in debt that the dollar, again, once there's an alternative to it, I think the dollar will collapse.
Another important topic coming into the table in this summit, aside from the growth of the BRICS, is also the Israeli ongoing aggressions against the peoples of the Middle East. And what role can BRICS play to bring an end to the Tel Aviv's expansionist policies and secure peace and stability in the Middle Eastern region?
Well, again, when you have key members of BRICS like Russia, China, Iran, you have a bloc that really could stop this genocide if they wanted to. And that might require a military intervention of some kind. And, Russia's already intervened in Syria to end that dirty war that the West started in 2011. And I think, Putin's been making noise that if Israel keeps going farther into Lebanon, and certainly if it goes into Syria, that they will have Russia to contend to. So I do think this represents a bloc that could end this war.
Also, high interest in the Ukraine crisis. Many nations are talking about how to bring an end through a negotiated process. President Putin himself said that he is willing to negotiate with Ukraine if it's done in the framework of the document drawn up in Turkey, where Ukraine will declare itself neutral and will reduce its armaments and will, of course, not join NATO. So do you think, how could this process happen in this BRICS summit? What can come out of this?
Well, first of all, we have to remember there was a deal that seemed that both sides could live with back in March of 2022, meaning, within about a month of the war starting, frankly, in which Ukraine could have kept all of the land it had prior to the special military operations beginning in February of 2022. And the US and UK intervened to kill that peace deal. So obviously peace is possible, though I think by now, it's not going to be on terms that were offered then. I don't think they're going to be able to get back those 4 voted to go with Russia. But, certainly, again, I think the countries that are in BRICS and the BRICS alliance can play a big role in helping negotiate a peace deal.
Thank you, Dan, for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure. We're going to stay tuned with everything that happens on BRICS, and we're going to be reporting here from the South. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Cuba, the electric union confirmed returning the service to 70.89% of the population. Authorities assured that 1,931 circuits have already been re-established, in addition to having restored 65 megawatts of electricity in the western Pinar del Rio province. They further report that the Fulton thermoelectric plant was currently operating in the eastern Holguin province. Moreover, a little bit further in Las Tunas province, experts have been working on connecting other circuits so recovery stopped temporarily. Likewise, they informed that they were advancing in the resumption of the Carlos Manuel de Céspedes power station in Cienfuegos province. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health stated that all vital services, including hospitals, count with electricity. The government of Colombia presents a plan of action to increase biodiversity protection to 34% by 2030 on the first day of sessions of the United Nations COP16 conference on biodiversity. The plan represents a commitment to peace and nature through the acceleration of territorial planning as a participatory process. Likewise, the proposal includes promoting the social ecological transition portfolio to implement strategic projects in 7 sectors that integrate criteria for the conservation, restoration, and recovery of ecosystems. The Colombian Minister of Environment, Susana Muhammad, assured that a strategy will be established to mobilize resources from all sources to fulfill the ambition set out in the Biodiversity Action Plan, as well as holding talks with the communities.
As COP16 hosts, we take the lead. For example, we are one of the countries that presents the complete plan after 2 years of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and what we have done reflects how we are going to meet the goals of the global framework. The plan seeks to bring together 4 strategic commitments to 2030 for the protection of biodiversity and 6 goals that include within them 23 goals of the framework in accordance with our specific contextual situation. These goals have to do first with going from 24% of the national territory that today is under environmental protection measures both in the continental part to 34%, and in the oceanic part we have further reached 30%, but we are going to gain 34%.
In Mexico, dozens of people attended the funeral of human rights activist priest Marcelo Perez, who was shot to death in the state of Chiapas. This way, funeral attendees paid homage to the parish priest and demanded the government justice for the crime. Perez was murdered inside his truck on Sunday morning when leaving the Church of Guadalupe after celebrating a mass in the city of San Cristobal de las Casas. In regards to the incident, President Claudia Sheinbaum informed on Monday that investigations are on the way and the Secretary of Government has made contact with the local and ecclesiastical authorities.
Of course, we regret this incident and we cannot speculate. We need the investigations to be carried out. Today, the Secretary of Citizen Security is in contact with the governor, and we are going to see if the case is taken over by the Attorney General's office or if it stays in the state. But we need the authorities, the Attorney General's office, to carry out the investigation and to collaborate and cooperate in everything that is required.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The United Nations Children's Fund reiterates its call for urgent action on the dire conditions in which thousands of children are surviving in the Gaza Strip. In this context, human rights organizations have recently launched a global action to draw attention to the appalling reality of Gazan children, with the motto, "The #1 killer of children on earth is Israel." The campaign takes into account the staggering number of minors killed by Zionist troops. Also in this regard, the UN Commissioner General for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, confirmed that Israeli authorities continue to deny the entry of missions to northern Gaza and denounced that they have turned humanitarian aid into a tool for their military purposes. Let's go back to Russia as the BRICS 2024 Summit is set to begin shortly. We are joined with our special envoy, Jonas Soner, who has more details from the ground.
Good afternoon from the Russian city of Kazan, in the western part, in the centric part of Russia, a city that is the symbol of East and West meeting, because there are different cultures, religions here. But now, from today on, this city is a symbol of the global South, because the BRICS Summit is starting. The leaders have started arriving today. They were met by the Russian authorities, and they have already started having bilateral meetings. I don't know if you can see it in the background. Here we see the Chinese President Xi Jinping right now having a bilateral meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is the day of bilateral meetings between the leaders. 36 countries will attend the summit. 22 of them will be represented at the level of head of government, head of state, so a huge representation, and they will discuss several issues. They have already started discussing these issues. One of them is the expansion, the enlargement of BRICS. There is a new model in discussion, that is the partner country status. The Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov has announced that model. Actually is, as in this discussion, that model would mean that the around 30 countries that want to join the alliance would be able to get a kind of partner status that is not full membership, but already included into the alliance. Ushakov said that 15 countries are candidates for that status. Also, a lot of discussion about economic relations, economic cooperation, basically about how to create an alternative global financial system, how to arrange cross-border payments without having to use the US dollar. Networking of commercial banks and central banks is in discussion. Blockchain induced cryptocurrencies are discussed here, but also establishing for commodities BRICS-owned trade platforms, which would also liberate the alliance from Western domination, as for instance grain or oil products could be traded and their prices determined on these trade platforms in BRICS countries. That would be a liberation from Western domination, because right now this is happening in trade in exchange places in London or New York. So there's a lot of discussion going on. Tomorrow the summit will take up pace. Tonight we expect there will be a welcome meeting of the leaders, a short one, and then they will have an informal dinner, and tomorrow the sessions will start. There will be 2 sessions tomorrow between the leaders, and the third day they will come together in the so-called BRICS Plus format with all the countries that would like to join the alliance. Remember, this summit takes place in parallel to another summit in Washington, D.C., where the representatives of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are meeting. They are celebrating the 18th anniversary of the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was a step to establish the US dollar hegemony. But here, right now, this system is getting a huge competition. There is an alternative being discussed here to that system established back in 1944. All the people that we spoke to here, experts and delegation members, said this is a long process. One has to be patient. They are optimistic, but they are also careful. This is a not easy task to establish such an alternative financial system, but it is an urgent need, as several countries are facing the threat or the damage of being attacked by sanctions. So this is the Russian presidency that is pursuing this, but we hear and read that the Chinese part also supports this. So next year, Russia will take over the presidency of the new development bank, while Brazil will take over the presidency of BRICS, and this tandem may then pursue further this process of de-dollarization.
Thank you, Juniors, for the updating information from the ground. That was our special envoy live in Kazan with all the details that is happening in this BRICS Summit as it's kickstarting. As he was saying, bilateral meetings have been happening over the day between the different heads of states. Over 22 heads of states are present in Kazan for this important BRICS Summit. Right now, at this very moment, President Vladimir Putin from Russia and Chinese President Xi Jinping are holding bilateral talks as they continue to enhance relations and cooperation between the both countries, which have seen an increase in trade and relations over the past 3-4 years. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.